Did you think I was gonna show you the entire thing right at the beginning of the video? Heck no, we gotta put that engine and that transmission together and then back up in that car. But this car is gonna be running by the end of this episode. Stay tuned. That's right, everybody. Today is the big day. And yes, I am skipping around my shop right now. Why? Because I am that freaking excited about what is to come today. What's to come today, you ask? Well, today is the day that we join the engine and the transmission and we begin getting this brand new, newly converted from 3.4 to 3.8 liter M96, super beefy M96 by the way, back up in this car, and today is when it's going to run for the very first time. Are you excited? I'm freaking excited. I'm getting my Italian hands back. I'm getting excited about things, you know? So we have a lot to do today. Definitely not gonna be a short on content kind of episode. So we have quite a few things to do today before we can just start throwing stuff together and putting it back up in this car. Item number one, well, we need to swap out the transmission mount, which I have yet to do just because the transmission has been underneath my table over here for months now. Could I have done it while I was waiting on engine parts? Yup. Did I do it? Nope. And then we need to get the engine off of the stand and then put it onto my hydraulic lift table, which I don't know why I just pointed at the ground right there. That's, I don't know. In my head, I'm like, that's where the hydraulic lift table is gonna go, I guess. I'm too excited to think rationally right now. I don't know. Oh, my Italian hands are coming. Stop it. So transmission mount, engine needs to come off the stand, go on a hydraulic table. We need to put the clutch, pressure plate, flywheel assembly together and back on the engine. We need to rejoin the engine and transmission. Then, let me think. Let me look across all of the table O parts real quick here. Yep, and then officially we'll be good to start putting stuff back up in the car. I need to stop talking because I'm just antsy and my Italian hands are coming back again. And we need to start getting to work so that we can start this freaking car. Let's go. First things first, let's go ahead and swap out our really bad transmission mount, but let me show you what this thing looks like. So here's my old original transmission mount, and you can see when you look at this thing, there are some serious cracks pretty much in all the very important areas, the very important structural areas. And you can see here, when you look at the top, that this part has been touching off to the stop. And in fact, yep, I can just move that with my hand, easy peasy. Therefore, that mount is absolutely shot. It's time to change it out. I'll show you guys how we do that in a second, but basically we're gonna be utilizing this special tool here that is just a series of different sized cups that allows the mount to get pulled out and then the new mount to get pushed in. It is an interference fit mount, so it does take some pretty decent force to be able to pull that out and put the new one in, but that's why, you know, you have the mechanical advantage of using these large bolts to be able to pull this thing through. Let's go ahead and do a quick unboxing of our brand new mount. I kind of did a bit of an upgrade, and I'm pretty psyched about it, and I actually have not opened this thing yet, and I've had it for maybe like 2 months, but I was waiting for you guys. I do this for you, you know? All right, back at our table O parts here. And here it is. Let me pop this out of the bag real quick. Boom. Our brand new, nicely upgraded mount from stock. This is the Renline upgraded transmission mount. It's supposed to be quite a bit stiffer than the stock mount, but supposedly it's a nice hybrid between stock and a super high performance, like rigid mount. And it supposedly improves shift feel some, so that's good, but I just want a mount that's not completely bottoming out. And causing, you know, a little bit more vibration than normal inside the cabin. All right, let's go ahead and pull our old mount out of the transmission, and then we can go ahead and take a closer look at that thing. Here it is, everybody. Here is our old transmission mount. Let's just take a couple quick seconds to look at this thing. As you can see, just inherently, it's kind of stretched way up in this direction. Not supposed to be that way. I mean, just look at the part numbers here. You can see that they're very kind of skewed. Looks like a freaking italic font. Not supposed to be italic font. It is literally cracked all the way through. I don't know if I have enough light. Yeah, see that crack in there? Dude, this thing was hosed. Absolutely hosed. I had noticed that it was pretty bad last time I had the engine and transmission out, but I also knew I was going to be doing this service soon, as in doing the entire engine rebuild, so I just figured I'd do it once we do everything. So here we are, obviously not a moment too soon. let's go ahead and get this spicy looking new Renline mount up in place. Just a couple things to note before we go ahead and throw this back up in place. I did go ahead and mark the line that is aligning straight with the bolt holes for the mount, just to make sure that we don't get that thing off-centered at all or turned. I might hit that with just a little bit of engine oil to kind of help aid with the insertion process. Aside from that though, we're pretty much good to go. So let's go ahead and get this thing installed. I messed up. I messed up so bad. Gosh darn it. I don't fully know what happened, to be honest. But I just freaking cracked my transmission housing. If you see right there, there's a nice little crack. I cannot believe I just did that. I cannot believe I just freaking did that. I turned it a few too many times, and I think I had it pushing up against itself. I had this mount pushing up against itself. Okay, well, I was really hoping that this episode was going to be showing the first start of this engine, and that mount swap was just supposed to be really quick and easy, no drama. But as it turns out, it caused all the drama. Gosh, I cannot believe I just did that. I'm still in disbelief that just happened. And the thing of it was too, I was like, it's starting to feel like it's getting too tight, and I'm gonna back it off. And right when I thought that, I hadn't even touched it with the wrench. Like, I think it was just under so much tension that it just finally gave out. Okay, well, I need to start thinking of solutions. So obviously we're at a standstill for now. I can't reinstall my transmission if I'm not even gonna reinstall this transmission. I mean, I'm reinstalling this transmission. There's no way around it. I need to find another nose cone for it. So if that means that I have to buy an entire effing transmission so that I can take its nose cone, then that just might have to be what the solution is. Man, I cannot believe that just freaking happened. And I was really wanting to drive this car, like tomorrow, but I guess it's not in the cards. That is not in the cards. So, okay. This throws the wrench in a lot of things. Well, you guys, this afternoon has been stressful so far, and it is all self-inflicted stress. Thanks to me completely screwing the pooch on this mount right here. Yeah, let me just show you a little bit closer what we got going on. There's my very nice crack through the freaking housing. Actually, it's basically just the nose cone of the transmission. So fortunately, the transmission housing is made up of two pieces, kind of the nose cone, upper half of it, and then the lower half where all of the gears and gear stacks are actually physically mounted too. So it's been a few hours since I did the deed, but I've been calling so many people all across the state of Ohio to ask if they weld aluminum. And usually their response is, yes, we weld aluminum, and then I tell them what it is, and they're like, no, we're not even gonna touch that. Like that, no way. So clearly I have something on my hands that's quite scary to even welders. And so my solution is either find someone who can weld it or buy a new transmission and use it for parts to swap out the nose cone. Because if you recall, last spring I pulled the transmission out of the car and completely rebuilt the entire second gear because the synchro was going bad. And that basically involved replacing everything having to do with second gear itself. Point being, I don't want to just swap transmissions. I have brand new hardware in there that I'd like to continue to use. I just need a good nose cone. It exists, you can find nose cones. I did find one, but it was for an 02 to 04, 02 to 04 Carrera 4, and they changed the transmission housing design significantly between 01 and 02. So that's not gonna work. And there are some transmissions out there that are refurbished. Unfortunately, because they're refurbished, they want a lot of money for them because the internals are supposedly refreshed. But I am actually, hopefully, not going to be going that route. Let me explain. I did finally come in contact with a guy who did turn me down about this welding job, but he does know a guy.
You know a guy.
He actually owns a race shop, and he does this kind of stuff all the time. I was fortunately able to get in contact with him after sending him pictures and everything. We talked about it for quite a while, and he said, yeah, like, bring it over. We can do that. It's going to be an extensive job, but it can be done. So that makes me very happy. Unfortunately, of course, he doesn't want me to just bring the entire transmission. That's a big freaking blob of metal and weight. He just wants the nose cone because it is possible to obviously, like I said, remove the nose cone. That's where we're at right now. I am going to get the nose cone separated from the transmission today, and then get it to him by tomorrow morning so that he can start working on it. So hopefully there will be a relatively short turnaround time doing this. This will probably be a fairly expensive welding job, but again, that's okay. At least I don't have to buy an entire transmission just for the sake of getting a nose cone. So kind of crazy. And I'm still in disbelief that I'm in this position, but you know what? These things happen, and I keep having to tell myself that. I mean, you know, these things happen. Bottom line, these things happen. And as much as they suck, it's not about the fact that it happened. It's about how you get back up from it when you completely screw the freaking pooch. And I admittedly completely screwed the freaking pooch. So I just wanted, obviously, to be transparent with you guys. This happened, you know, this is real life. I'm not trying to just sweep this under the rug and be like, and here's our brand new mount, you know. All right, now we've got the transmission on the bench in the workshop, as you can see. Let me walk you guys through the procedure to how to take off this nose cone really quickly. Now, by the way, I did cover this in extensive detail in a previous video that I made about 1.5 years ago now, probably. So if you want deep detail on how to do this, go ahead and watch that video. So there's a bunch of 13mm bolts around the perimeter of this nose cone. We got to zap all those out. Then the nose cone is basically free. We do need to pry at a few various points. There are a few kind of sketchy pry points that we can utilize. You kind of just have to get creative with this thing. But on the underside of this, on this lever, is a little puck, and it is inside of the groove of one of the shift forks, actually the rod for one of the shift forks. And as you lift the nose cone off, it will get caught up. So you kind of have to twist the nose cone and then move this a little bit to be able to slide the nose cone off. Otherwise, it will basically just keep getting hooked on that and won't allow you to take it off. So it definitely takes a little bit of a knack. These things are really goofy to work with, especially if you've worked on a lot of engines before. Working on transmissions is kind of a completely different ballpark. It's a totally different mentality. But that's not to say you should be afraid to do it. So don't be afraid to tackle this if you need to do this on your own car. Well, I've been kind of busy since that last time lapse. Let me go ahead and show you where I'm at right now. So obviously you guys saw that I got the nose cone off the transmission. This honestly kind of resembles like a futuristic city or something. I feel like I'm about to see like a freaking flying car like go by this thing or something. Anyway, this is the inside of the transmission. Good news about this, everything looks to be in the same condition that it was when I last had this apart when I did the second gear synchro. Right here's all the stuff that I took out of the nose cone. Like I said, I've been sort of busy since the last time lapse, but basically this is a little bearing carrier for the tops of the shift forks here, and then this is the reverse gear. And then this is a bearing for this guy right here. That's what this guy goes into. Basically, I just wanted to take all that out because obviously the welder is going to have to be turning this thing all around in every single direction, grinding, welding on it. And obviously I don't want that very expensive, delicate hardware inside of this thing still while he's doing what he has to do. All of that stuff goes just up in the front of the nose cone there. There are still 2 little roller bearings, or ball bearings, I guess, that are inside of there. Unfortunately, those are pressed in, and I'm not going to be able to take those out, so I'm just going to have to like shove towels up in there and be like, please be delicate and try not to get any kind of like metal dust up in there or anything. Yeah, regardless, those are going to have to go along for the ride of the entire welding experience. So I think it is ready to go to this guy. Yeah, I'm going to take it to him tomorrow morning, and I'm not sure how quick he's going to be able to do this or like what his turnaround time on it is. He's expecting he's going to have to take probably like 4 or 5 hours to be doing this just because it's a pretty labor intensive process, which, you know, I was like, yeah, by all means, take all the time you need, man. I will pick up at a later date and time when we maybe have the nose cone back. I went ahead and threw on the exhaust, and as you can see, it is all installed now, torqued down. I took the oil filter cover off because we didn't have a filter in there before, and we're actually gonna go ahead and install that now while we've got the engine flipped upside down, and just so that we don't forget, for peace of mind. I super satisfyingly went ahead and cleaned up the inside of this even further. This thing is freaking dialed. That's a little bit of new motor oil from me lubricating up our O-ring here, but you guys, our oil filter for our brand new Project Beef is going in place right now. There, like that, like that. Well, boys and girls, boom shakalaka. As you can see, we've got the engine upright again in its correct orientation, and look how beautiful it looks with that exhaust. Like I said, it really does start to look like an actual internal combustion engine again once the exhaust is actually put back on it. And it's not just a blob of metal with some occasional plastic tubes, but honestly, the intake does really help a lot, not gonna lie. So with the exhaust on, it is time to get our engine off of the stand, which is extremely exciting because that means it's one step closer to being able to put it up in that car right there. But first, we've got to get the 944 out of the way because we need to be able to get the tractor out to put the engine from the stand onto the hydraulic lift table. And obviously we're not just gonna move the 944, we're gonna take it for a quick procrastination drive. Let's go ahead and do that. Well, everybody, I have good news. We are officially back on track. What a stressful freaking situation I got myself into with this whole freaking bushing mount. Let me show you where we're at. Okay, so there it is. That's our bushing. It is all back together. It is installed and it's welded back up. Look at this weld, guys. This is such a beautiful thing. I'll flash up some pictures of what this looks like without the bushing in there. I did take some pictures beforehand. But yeah, as you can see, we've got our mount reinstalled back in there, good to go. He is a pro through and through. This guy is an absolute legend. I didn't realize this, but I mean, I guess I kind of figured, I should have figured that he's got some chops, considering that he was willing to take this job on. But I got to talking to the guy, and the stuff that he gets into is so cool. He basically builds custom race cars, and he was building some chassis for cars as I was in there picking this up. His shop is 15 minutes from my house. I had no idea that there was a custom race car builder 15 minutes from my freaking house, but that was cool. Very cool. So he did understand everything that I was going through with this, and he didn't blame me one bit for causing this to happen. He's like, that kind of stuff happens so easily. You know, you get your tool off just a little bit, and the next thing you know, you start putting weird stresses on the housing. He's like, I've done it 100 times. So thankfully, he fully understood. So he did a super thorough job, you guys. He said basically he ground down from both sides, inside and outside, put basically a V grind into it to build this channel. And then he clamped this down back to the original, inner diameter to where the crack met up. And then he welded the outside and then went and welded the inside and then ground it down. And then he ended up putting, like, I think he said 4 or 5 passes on either side from the inside, ground it down again, perfectly smooth. I mean, you could hardly tell that there's a weld there on the inside. I mean, really, you can't tell. It's pretty amazing. I mean, when you look at this. But anyway, like I said, we are at that point now where it's time to start putting everything back together. I need to put all this stuff back together, and then we'll truly be back to the same place we were. But I'm not going to bore you guys with these details. We're going to pick up from having this transmission hopefully fully reassembled and good to go back up in the car. So, Future David, take it away. Well, friends, and just like that, we've got our transmission back together. I feel like the guy from that commercial in like the 2000s, there's like, this is Bob. Aside from what that commercial advertised for, I just feel like that guy because I'm like freaking giddy right now. But I'm so glad that it is back together and I'm feeling like Bob. And it is now to the point where we are officially exactly where we were a week ago today, when we were going to take the engine off the stand, put the clutch, pressure plate, flywheel assembly onto the engine, and mate the transmission and the engine together. So, without further ado, now that we're at that point, we might as well just, yeah, let's go. Well, everyone, here we are, installation day. Are we psyched? I'm psyched. But before we get started on that, I just want to do one thing really quickly. Hold on. All right. That's more like it. I haven't felt worthy of wearing the teeny tiny Porsche sport coat since I'd freaking cracked the transmission housing. But you know what? We're back on track, everybody, and I feel worthy again. So, let's get this thing reassembled. Alrighty, time for going back together with our DMF, our dual mass flywheel. I am reusing the one that I've been running on this car. It doesn't have all that many miles on it. And actually, if you check the play in it, there's like next to none in it. I mean, it's the original amount of play, the amount of play that it should have. So this thing is perfectly fine to continue running. And honestly, these are expensive, so I'm just not going to replace it. These are an absolute pain in the butt to get lined up. There's a tiny little dowel right here, and it has to go into this tiny hole right there. And of course, this thing weighs like freaking 30 pounds. So trying to just like hold this thing up and get it aligned. Ooh, did I get it? Yes. Just gonna take one of our brand new flywheel bolts. Always replace these bad boys. Boom, we've got our flywheel installed. All right, got our fresh flywheel hardware snugged up. Time to torque these puppies down. It is 25 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. Before we put our clutch and pressure plate assembly on, I am just going to go ahead and wipe this flywheel friction surface down one last time. I'm also going to go do the same thing to the pressure plate. Got a little bit of brake clean on a rag here, just because, you know, who knows? This thing's been sitting out for a couple months. And with our friction surfaces looking clean, I've got my clutch centering tool here. Put this thing in the center of it, and boom. This just goes right into the pilot bearing of the flywheel. That way your clutch is nice and centered. This is critical, obviously, for the installation of the transmission. For the transmission input shaft, you need that to be able to line up perfectly. Okay, let's see, we'll find our dowels. Where are our dowels? So we've got all these taut and up against the flywheel now, I think. Let me just double check that one. Yep, all right, cool. So now it is time to torque this thing. These bolts go to 23 Newton meters. Boom. Clutch, pressure plate, flywheel, assembly, reinstalled, retorqued, good to go. Boom, look at that transmission installation. Roll that beautiful bean footage. What does that have anything to do with anything? It doesn't. I'm just excited that our transmission and engine are back together. Sorry, I'm gonna stop talking like I'm a friggin' 1980s animatronic animal at Chuck E. Cheese's. All the bolts are snugged up, but they are not torqued yet. Basically, all of them are 85 Newton meters except for the bottom two bolts. There's one here and then there's one on the other side. Those are 45 Newton meters. So, very simple. 85 Newton meters, 45 Newton meters just for those bottom two. Let's go ahead and get to torquing and twerking, you know what I mean? Boom, torqued and twerked. All right, well, everything is officially good to go, back up in the car from a powertrain perspective. Our engine and transmission are dialed, you guys. Now it's just time to put it back up in the car. Let's just hope I remember to put gear oil and engine oil in this stuff. Ooh, that would suck, wouldn't it? Do you guys, I mean, should we, yeah, right? Okay, yeah, let's do it. You guys, look at these super sad, empty looking carts just sitting here in the shop. Why are they empty, you ask? Well, that's because we've got our engine and transmission back up in the 911. Project Beef is well underway. Look how well this thing aligned. It even like just put the vacuum hose directly in its home. I didn't do that.
Who do you think you are? I am!
Well, we have the engine and transmission back up in the old girl, as you can see. We don't have anything hooked up yet though, so we've got a long, long ways to go with regards to all of that. Coolant hoses, electrical connections, engine mounts, fuel lines. I mean, dude, you name it. Literally freaking everything. It's all loose. I know you guys can't really see very well in here, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of stuff to hook up. Well, kids, I've been making solid progress. One thing I did forget to mention that we have to do in the process of putting all this back together is to please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Greatly, greatly appreciated. So let me go ahead and show you where we're at so far. Now, I did go ahead and get everything bundled up to be in the startup ready position on the top side here and on the bottom. From the bottom side, of course, what this entails is basically getting all of our coolant pipes and coolant hoses back up in place, clamped down and good to go. In addition, it's easy to forget, but you always got to remember the ground strap on the right side of the car. And of course, on the top side, we had to get the intake plenum and throttle body put back in place, get all of the related hoses that connect to this intake plenum put back in place. Over here, we got the fuel lines connected. Down here, we have the secondary air injection system reconnected and reinstalled. Power steering fluid reservoir is reinstalled, good to go. Coolant lines up top, all good to go. Routed the O2 harnesses back up in their places respectively. From now, the only thing left to do is, of course, we have to put our serpentine belt back on and get the airbox reinstalled. But of course, we have to fill her up with engine oil from the top side as well. So we are literally at the point where all we need to do is do those last couple things on the top side, serpentine belt and airbox, and then put fluids in this puppy. We'll go ahead and start on the bottom side with the gear oil, and then we'll work on the top side from there and finish up all the rest of our fluids. Let's do some transmission filling. All right, we are going to fill our transmission up with, of course, Redline 75W90 GL5 specification gear oil. This transmission takes about 3 quarts, I believe. I think. You know we're going back together with the good stuff, and this is the good stuff. As you know, this is Project Beef, and we have cut 0 corners along the way to make this thing the most robust, most beefy M96 on the planet, and that is absolutely reflected in the fluids that we are putting up into this car. Therefore, we're running Redline, we're only running the best. I'm just gonna do the rest of this off camera, and we'll pick up with engine oil? Maybe we'll do engine oil next. Sure, let's do it. Alrighty then, well, now that we've got gear oil down on our transmission is cherry and good to go, it's time to put engine oil in. But before I do that, I wanna go ahead and start pulling down our cooling system so that we can vacuum fill it. And of course, if you've seen my videos in the past about this, you'll know that basically this kind of has a dual purpose. We can pull it down to a vacuum, and then once we stop pulling it down to a vacuum, we can let it sit at that vacuum state for a while to check and make sure that the pressure inside the system doesn't start returning back towards atmosphere. In the event that it does, then we'll know that we have some kind of a coolant leak somewhere. So this is just a good way to fill the coolant system for one, but also to just make sure that we don't have anything obviously loose and unhooked still at this point in the game. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing going. All you gotta do there is, well, we take our coolant bleeder, which has this little cone-shaped bad boy. This is a rubber cone, and it seals nicely to your expansion tank. I'm gonna hook this up to some shop air here. Boom, turn this thing on. All right, we are pulling her down to pressure, hopefully. Let's see, yep, we're coming down. Okay, and we're off to the races. Now we just gotta let this thing do its thing for about, I don't know, probably the next 15, 20 minutes or so. All right, y'all, well, here's the situation. As you can probably hear, I am sucking the coolant system back down yet again because unfortunately, it seems we have a leak somewhere. I'm not sure where right now. So I'm at the point basically now where we just need to put coolant into it, unfortunately, and figure out if we can start to see any drips coming from anywhere. That's the unfortunate situation. All right, everybody, I found our coolant leak. Let me show you where it's at. Okay, so it is that little plate right there, and you can see, hopefully, that there's a little coolant drip on the bottom corner of that. It's actually seemingly sealing up a little bit better than what it was a little bit ago, but we don't have the coolant system under pressure at all right now, and it is consistently dripping. So that appears to be our issue because I don't see coolant coming from anywhere else. I've been checking the front end. Obviously we had the entire front end apart when we did the center radiator installation, but it does not appear as of right now that there is anything coming from that end of the car. And I guess that's kind of not surprising because I did forget to order that gasket. It did look to be in decent shape, and I decided I was just going to rerun it. I think I literally replaced every other gasket on this entire engine except for that one because it just slipped my mind. I mean, it's such an easy one to forget, that little rectangular gasket on the back side of the engine. Currently, it's biting me in the butt. So, fortunately though, that's just a little drip, and I'm not gonna let it stop us. We're still going to start this car in this episode, and then we'll just have to order that gasket, drain the coolant again, replace it, and go from there. But you can't put a freaking engine together and have there not be a freaking coolant leak. Every time, dude, every time. It just happens, it's part of it. It is officially time to start filling this puppy up with some engine oil. Now that we've diagnosed our coolant leak, we're moving on. We're moving on. We've got to do a test fire with this thing, but in order to test fire it, we got to have engine oil in it. And we are going in with this Redline break-in oil. This is the good stuff, you guys. This video is sponsored by Redline, full disclosure, but regardless, I would be using this no matter what. This stuff is just tip top. The benefit of break-in oil during the break-in process is that basically it has properties that allow for the delicate parts of the engine that need critical lubrication to be lubricated like they would always be, but it allows for the rings to actually seat. Obviously, we have brand new piston rings and brand new cylinder walls. They have not been seated with one another whatsoever, and we really need to run the right stuff for the first, say, 300 to 500 miles to allow those rings to nicely seat with each other and get this engine a really good, solid break-in. Then, of course, we'll change this oil out with the next series of oil that we're gonna run. Go ahead and check out redlineoil.com. See what all they have to offer. Obviously, I've showcased that they have gear oil. We used that just a little bit ago in this video to fill up the transmission. I've used their gear oil in the 944. I've used their engine oil in the 944. We've used their coolant in the 944. Guys, they have everything that you need for your car. So go ahead, check out their website, see what all they have to offer. Thank you so much, Redline, for sponsoring today's video. Let's go ahead and get to filling. You guys, it's time. It's time to start the car. Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
Can you feel it, Mr. Krabs?
There's tension in the air. The tension in the air. I just finished filling the oil, and I went ahead and put power steering fluid in it, at least topped it up. Here's kind of our staging fluid situation. Sorry, brightest freaking light in the world. So we've got 10 quarts of the 40 weight Redline break-in oil. already in the car. Obviously we have 0 engine oil up in the cylinder heads, so once we get oil up in the cylinder heads, we'll have to shut it off, top up the oil. We should be good to go from there. Coolant ready to go here for inevitably when we begin to open the thermostat and pull down what is in the expansion tank currently. And then I have some of the power steering fluid sitting right there as well, because I topped up the reservoir, but again, inherently, once we start running that pump, it's gonna suck that reservoir down, and we're gonna need to top it up as the thing runs. There's always kind of a lot going on whenever you do the first engine start after you put an engine back in. A lot of things to just keep track of and keep tabs on. So here's the game plan. These engines don't love to make oil pressure just by cranking. I have built oil pressure in this vehicle before, just from cranking after I reinstalled the engine once, but it did take a little bit. Basically, the better method is to crank it, let it fire. Once it catches, shut it right off, and then do that 2 or 3 times. By that point, you should have sufficient oil pressure. Once we get the engine running, once we have the oil topped up, once we've monitored that we have enough power steering fluid in the system and we're not making the pump whine like crazy, we will then let it run, assuming all goes well and all sounds good. We're gonna let it run for about 20 to 25 minutes to get some heat in this engine for the first time. That's the game plan. Let's just cross our fingers and hope that everything looks good, sounds good. We don't have any significant issues upon the actual first startup. We'll see. I'm nervous. Again, it's just been a long time coming, and we're finally minutes away from firing this puppy up. So let's just really quickly go through the checklist. We plugged everything in. I'm about 97% sure everything is plugged in. We put oil in it. Good. We put gear oil in it. Good. We put coolant in it. Dang it, we have a coolant leak, but coolant is in it. At least, good enough to do the initial startup. And we have power steering fluid in it. Oh, did you like and subscribe? That was the only other thing on the list. So if you didn't, go ahead and like and subscribe. Okay, good? All right, cool. Now we can proceed. Now, okay, let's go ahead and do it. But obviously just a few things to note. It will probably crank for a second because we have 0 fuel in the fuel filter or the fuel line, so it has to build fuel pressure. That'll take a little bit of cranking, probably a couple of cranks to actually get the pump primed and fuel up and throughout the fuel rails. Next thing, the lifters. They have oil in them, but they've never been pressurized by this system, so we may hear some either uneven cranking at first due to uneven valve lift from cylinder to cylinder, or we may hear some lift or tick at first. So all things that suck when you first hear it and you're like, what the hell is that? But it's just stuff that will happen and then go away. Okay, everybody, here it is. Here we go. This is the start. This is the first start. Let's go ahead and do it.
I just went and did one last check on our oil level. We're sitting pretty. Coolant level is good. Hydraulic fluid for the power steering is overfilled, which will get sucked down immediately.
Weirdly enough, our coolant leak has kind of stopped. I re-torqued that, and I actually maybe think I had it over-torqued, but I don't know. We'll see if it continues to drip. I'm sure it will.
Everything is plugged in. O2 sensors, NAF sensor, throttle body. All of the vacuum lines are plugged in. Fuel, obviously, is plugged in. Solenoid's plugged in.
All right, well, cool. Let's turn her over and see what we get. Wish me luck. Okay. No oil pressure yet. There's oil pressure. Cool. We're up at about 5 bar. Power steering is very low. All right, let's go look back here. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and shut this off real quick. First of all right. For a first start, things sound really good. We're running on 6 cylinders, awesome. As expected, we did go ahead and suck the power steering fluid right out of that reservoir. You could hear the pump whining right away. And while I'm doing this will be a good opportunity to let our oil kind of settle back down to the sump so we can get an accurate ish reading. Since we just got oil pressure, that means we now have oil up in the cylinder heads. And those things pool at least a quart into the cylinder heads. So I'm guessing we're gonna have next to no oil showing on the dipstick now. All right, let's go ahead and check the oil real quick. Oh yeah, absolutely nothing on the dipstick. And like I said, it was full on the dipstick, or according to the dipstick, before we started that just now. So that just goes to show you how much oil goes out to the cylinder heads once you actually start this thing up. Alrighty, so I went ahead and added 2 more quarts of oil, which actually only got it to kind of a bare minimum oil level for where I would like to see it. But I honestly think at the same time, a lot of this, very cold oil is still up in the heads, and it's probably still taking some time to run back. But we now have 12 quarts of oil in this system, which is understandable. This engine holds a lot of oil, and there was 0 oil in it. And I also had to chase down a fuel leak really quick. I hadn't tightened down the fuel filter, or the line of the fuel filter all the way. Even though I had that pretty snug, it was still leaking a little bit. So that's yet another thing we have to keep monitoring as we do this. So let's go ahead and give it another fire. We'll let it run a little bit longer this time, and we'll just see how it goes. Power steering fluid. Oh yeah. Well, we've got some brand new lifters that are needing to be worked in, that's for sure. You can hear them ticking a little bit. Another second of just messing with the power steering, and then we can actually get to... All right, it's a little over full, but we'll deal with setting that actual level at a later date. At least for now, we're not running the pump dry. And coolant level in the reservoir is still holding steady. So I'm just trying to keep the revs up and to get this thing hot. We're gonna go check on it in a second here. Good news is we are at 5 bar of oil pressure. Man, this thing sounds good. All right, well, I'm gonna just keep doing this for a little while. Not super entertaining, obviously, but I just gotta get this thing up to temperature, see how she's doing. And then it's basically break-in part 1 is to get this thing up to operating temperature, run it for about 20 to 25 minutes. The next step will be checking for leaks. If we don't have any leaks, then great, then maybe we can actually go on a first drive with this thing. So it's just a very kind of tedious process. So I'm gonna keep doing that. You guys, it's freaking running. It's running. You guys, I am a happy freaking dude. We just did this first successful start of Project Beef. She's running, baby. She's running, and dang, does she sound good. Oh my gosh. I honestly, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. I could not be more thrilled right now. Almost 6 months in the making. It's I think in 2 weeks, it will be 6 months since I took the engine out of this car to disassemble it and have new cylinders put in this thing. And today we hear it run again, and for the very first time as Project Beef. Sure, we've got a little bit of a coolant leak. We can deal. We remedied the fuel leak. We've got some lifters that have yet to kind of shut up yet, but that is very normal with these engines, especially when you put brand new lifters in them. She's a runner. She's a runner, and dang does she sound strong, and dang does she sound good. But you just never know with this kind of thing. You know, we redid so many things inside this engine. So many parts are brand new. Everything was taken apart. Literally everything was taken apart. You never know. You know, we could fire it up and be running on 3 cylinders and be like, why the heck are we running on 3 cylinders? Or have no oil pressure and we're like, why the heck do we have no oil pressure? But she's healthy. She sounds great. And the next step is to drive her. So that is gonna happen in the next episode. Thank you all so much for being here today. I super appreciate each and every one of you for going along with me on this journey. You guys are the best. I just can't say it enough. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please stay tuned for the next episode when we go ahead and take this thing on its maiden voyage as Project Beef. It's gonna be epic. It's gonna be awesome. I can already tell just by the way it revs that she's a spicy little meatball. So hopefully we can really quickly put the break-in miles on this thing and actually start driving it the way that it's meant to be driven. And teaser, I do have a little bit of a before and after video coming up very soon once we get this thing broken in of actual before after performance metrics. So definitely want to stay tuned for that. Thank you all again so much for tuning in to Funhead TV. I really appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Yes, I'm looking right at you, and I will see you all hopefully in the next episode. Thank you. Oh, hey everyone, just a quick reminder, super high quality Funahead TV merch is available on funaheadtv.com right now. So head on over to funaheadtv.com and get yourself some today. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Also, thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see even more great Funahead TV content, please click the link right here. I'll see you over there.
I'm choking on my own spit.